I'm Mike Monticello, and this is the review of the 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid. Now, first off, the 2026 Crosstrek isn't actually a totally redesigned model, but what's new is that it's available as a hybrid, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. If you're not familiar with the Crosstrek, it's basically a raised ride height version of the Impreza, which gives it kind of an aura of off-road ability. Now, the Crosstrek has traditionally done well in our tests thanks to its comfortable ride, responsive handling, good fuel economy, standard all-wheel drive, and mostly simple controls. But it's plagued by a very abrupt throttle delivery off the line, which is annoying. And then after that, the engine really just doesn't have that much power and it feels pretty slow, plus the engine gets loud. So the hybrid goes a long way to addressing some of those issues, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, the regular Crosstrek also has something new for 2026, which is a larger 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine as standard equipment, and we have a review video on that as well, so make sure you check that out. So Crosstreks are pretty easy to spot because they have these really rugged-looking black wheel well arches along with the increased ride height that we talked about, and then the Sport Hybrid trim that we tested has some unique gold or yellow finish accents like the fog lights around right here. And then the interior has some, again, kind of yellow or goldish stitching and some unique trim. And then Subaru put three kind of large hybrid badges on the vehicle, two on the sides and the one on the rear, kind of letting people know, yeah, this really is a hybrid. Just as with the Forester Hybrid, Subaru looked to Toyota for some of the hybrid hardware on the Crosstrek, which makes sense. Toyota has been building hybrids for decades. So it consists of Subaru's 2.5-liter horizontally opposed flat 4, along with a 1.1 kilowatt-hour battery, and then a transmission that operates most similarly to a continuously variable transmission, with power going to all four wheels, the standard all-wheel drive. Total power output is 194 horsepower, which is a 14 horsepower advantage over the regular Crosstrek. For our test program, we bought a 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Sport Hybrid. The price starts at $33,995, and our test car had just a few options on it, including its sand dune pearl gray paint, all-weather floor mats, and a few other items, and along with the $1,420 destination fee, the total cost of our test vehicle was $37,378. Final assembly point for our Crosstrek Hybrid was Ota, Japan. Of course, we can't talk about a hybrid without talking about fuel economy. And here, the Crosstrek Hybrid rates at 36 miles per gallon across the board according to the EPA. 36 city, 36 highway, and 36 MPG combined, and that's against the regular Crosstrek's 29 MPG combined according to the EPA. But we got to also talk about this right here, symmetrical all-wheel drive. That's very important to Subaru. They're known for having more robust small SUVs in terms of off-road ability, and they didn't want to lose that by going with a hybrid. Keep in mind, most small hybrid SUVs use an electric motor or motors to send power to the rear for that all-wheel drive. Subaru didn't want to do that. They wanted to keep their mechanical all-wheel drive. And the upside is it means it's going to be a little more capable in deep snow, muddy roads, those kinds of things, maybe a mild off-road trail than most other small hybrid SUVs. The downside is it's going to take a little bit of a fuel economy hit. Similar to most small SUVs, it's pretty easy to get in and out of the Crosstrek. It helps that it has this nice tall entryway, the door opens really wide, and the seats are higher than in your average car, so it's not so much you're falling down into them, it's more that you're sliding over and just a little bit down onto them. Shorter people like me are probably gonna brush a pants leg on the deep rocker panel here. So one of the many tests we do is we evaluate the driving position, and basically what we're trying to figure out is how comfortable and how well do people sit behind the wheel. And here it's pretty good. As with most SUVs, you have kind of that slightly elevated seating position, which gives you a nice view out over the road, and the dashboard is pretty low, and a pretty low instrument cluster shroud, which we like. And then, you know, even though you sit kind of high, most drivers are going to find that they have enough headroom. I also like that when I have the steering wheel in a comfortable position, I can see most things within the screen, with the one exception of the turn signal icons. They are blocked when I have that wheel at that lower position that I prefer. Now, some of the other things that aren't as great, there's a fair amount of center console intrusion with your right knee. This is pretty common among vehicles, but some automakers pad this area. It's not padded at all here. And the other thing we noticed is that the left footrest, or dead pedal as some people call it, it's well placed, but it's on the narrow side and it gets particularly squished toward the top left. So that just, again, it's making you feel not like you want to be able to spread out a little more, and you can't. And the other issue is that the armrests aren't on the exact same planes. We really like to see symmetrical armrests. And here, the one on the door is higher than the center one. And while the one on the door has very nice padding, the center one has thin padding that it's very easy for your right elbow to just push through to the plastic. So our testers liked the Crosstrek's front seats, but they didn't love the front seats. On the one hand, they're pretty nicely shaped with good sized bolsters on both the seat back and the bottom cushion, and a fair amount of leading edge bottom cushion tilt for the driver's seat. That helps you dial in some leg support, but taller drivers felt that the seat was just a little small. In particular, the bottom cushion just wasn't long enough for them. And keep in mind, on this Sport Hybrid, only the driver's seat is power operated. The front passenger seat has only manual operations and no ability to adjust the height up and down. So if you're a taller passenger, you might find that you're going to get a little short on headroom. As with most aspects of the Crosstrek, the controls layout isn't flashy, but it's mostly user-friendly. Like, for instance, we really like that Subaru is continuing to still use an actual volume and tuning knobs. That's very important. All hybrids get an 11.6-inch portrait-oriented infotainment touchscreen, which portrait-oriented meaning it's longer than it is wide, but it's not the best. For one thing, it can be a little slow to boot up when you first turn the car on, and then also sometimes when you press the buttons, they're a little slow to respond to your inputs. The other thing is this layout puts some items down low, in particular the climate controls, and that's kind of the other one bummer about the system, is that really the only easy to use climate controls are these temperature buttons for the driver and front passenger, as well as the defrost. But of course, you use these all the time. Fan speed is visible, but you still have to go through the screen and it's kind of low. So that's a bit of a bummer. And if you want to change something like the airflow, if you want to sync, change the airflow, like if you want to have it like this, or put the defrost on, or have it just on your face, you always have to go through the climate screen to do that, which is a bit of a bummer. The Hybrid replaces the analog gauges that are found in the regular Crosstrek with a new digital driver's instrument screen. And we think Subaru did a pretty nice job making it look a little more modern and adding some functionality without making it more complicated. So another thing that we evaluate is fit and finish. And basically that's assessing how nice are the materials inside the car. And with the Crosstrek, it's definitely more utilitarian than it is luxurious, but there are some nice elements here and there that we appreciate. For instance, this kind of carbon look weave trim that's on the dash that flows into both doors. Both front doors have this soft cloth material with contrasting stitching, which is nice. And the seats in this Sport Hybrid trim have, kind of a nice sporty look to them with, again, the exposed stitching and the two-tone material. But there's also some kind of hard plastic areas that are a little bit on the cheap side. There's a fair amount of really cheap feeling plastic up here. And then you have things like this piano black plastic. We never like to see that in the center console because this is an area that, you're going to be throwing keys and it easily gets scratched. It collects dust, shows up smudges and fingerprints, so we're not huge fans of that. And then one other item is that while the sun visors, they're actually pretty thick and sturdy, but again, they have this sort of exposed mold line that is scratchy to the touch. And the last item is kind of both good and bad. These seat heaters, right? If you know anything about Subarus, they've had these for a long time and they look and kind of feel old school when you turn them on and off. They don't have like a super high quality feel, but we still love them anyway, because unlike a lot of heated seat buttons these days, which time out, these are physical. So if you turn it on, it stays on until you turn that button back to off or onto high. And we really like that. So getting into the back seat is definitely a little more difficult than up front. As you can see, I had to duck a fair amount because the roof line really slopes a fair amount here, but it's still pretty easy overall, especially because the door opens nice and wide, which isn't always the case with small SUVs. But your feet can get a little hung up. It's a narrow area here getting past the B-pillar. And the only other thing is getting back out. You do have to kind of contort your body a little bit around the rear wheel well, but overall, it's still pretty easy. Once you're in, it's pretty comfortable and spacious, especially for such a small SUV, with the one exception that the headroom might be a little tight for taller people. But if you look, there's plenty of knee room, there's good foot space underneath the front seats, and the bottom cushion is high enough off the floor and kind of raked back enough that for me, I have pretty good under leg support. So let's talk cargo area. Manually operated liftgate, no problem, it's easy to use, but this is where we see some compromises versus the regular Crosstrek, in that this cargo floor is higher than the regular one because it has to deal with some hybrid components. So you're going to lose a little bit of cargo volume overall. And also important to people is it doesn't have a spare tire like the regular Crosstrek. So that means if you get a flat tire, you're going to be stuck either using this sealant kit or you're going to be calling for roadside assistance, which is a bit of a bummer. So we're used to seeing a lack of compact spare tires in hybrids, but we're not used to seeing the cargo room diminished. Usually these days, hybrids have the exact same cargo capacity as their regular counterparts. So now we're out on the test track, so let's talk about what it's like to actually drive this Crosstrek Hybrid. And we're gonna start with visibility. And the Crosstrek is pretty good. We really like that it has slim windshield pillars or A-pillars, and that it has pretty big triangle windows as well that, again, help with all of that. And the front side windows are also quite good. They're pretty long and reasonably tall. But as with a lot of small SUVs, once you start going rearward, it gets a little more constricted. The rear windows in particular they follow the roof line, right? Which we talked about when we get into the vehicle, we have to contend with the rear seat of how the roof slopes down. Well, the same thing. The windows follow that sloping roof line, so they do get a little bit scrunched. And then as, again, with most small SUVs, the rearmost pillars are pretty chunky, so you do have to contend with it. There are gonna be some blind spots back there, but on the bright side, the rear window is actually pretty good size for such a small little SUV. So now I'm gonna come to a stop because I wanna talk about one of the most important changes with the hybrid versus the regular model, which is this electric shove off the line. We talked about how the regular Crosstrek suffers from very abrupt throttle off the line, which is annoying, and you have to kind of drive around that. With the hybrid, it has electric assist that gets you off the line smoothly and is so much better than what I call the Subi surge, right? When the thing jumps off the line. And depending on how hard you are into the throttle, I find usually around 7 to 10 miles an hour is when the gas engine comes on. But in that case, it was more like 18 because I was really gentle with the throttle. So it is just really a much nicer powertrain to deal with when you come to a stop or rolling stops, to be able to have that electric assist. There's no delay. It's just smooth electric power off the line. And it is really a big benefit of the hybrid over the regular model. So it has an electronic continuously variable transmission, or an eCVT. And in most situations, it works pretty well. CVTs are pretty good about keeping the revs low when you're not very hard on the throttle. And it does have good power when you want to get around someone, say in a 2-lane passing zone. With that electric assist and the larger engine, it really will go with some pretty good force. I was pretty impressed with the speed I could get up to and how quickly I could get up to it. But as you also notice there, the engine can get a little bit loud. It's not as loud as in the regular Crosstrek, but when you need to accelerate with some force, that engine is gonna get loud, and it doesn't sound great. And the other thing is, unlike the regular Crosstrek CVT does do what we call simulated upshifts, which even when you're accelerating with some moderately hard, it's going to keep trying to kind of shifting to keep those revs down. This one doesn't do that. It's not a huge shock because it's based on a Toyota hybrid system, and the Toyota hybrids do not do any of those simulated upshifts. But it means that when you are, say, accelerating a little harder, or when you're climbing a long hill, you're probably gonna have that gas engine on and probably at pretty high revs. So that's one area that we wish it was a little more refined. So just like the regular Crosstrek, the hybrid has a really good ride quality. In fact, it's actually better. Quite often, hybrids with their extra weight tend to settle a car down, and that is definitely the case here. I never had a single harsh moment the whole time I drove it. Most of our testers were really happy with the ride quality. And sometimes with sport trims, you get a stiffer suspension tune and it kind of hurts the ride quality, but that's definitely not the case here. This has just a really good absorbency for bumps, keeps the body pretty well controlled too. A little bit of occupant jostling, but nothing too bad. So we think most people will be really happy with the level of ride quality here. So kind of what we've been talking about, how hybrids are kind of a unique beast in a sense. Of course, they're certainly not beasts, but they are unique animals. And another aspect that we will notice with some hybrids is that the brake pedal feel can be strange. It can either be soft, or there can be some regenerative braking nonlinearity just as you're coming to a stop. So they can sometimes be a little bit difficult to deal with. But our testers thought that the Crosstrek Hybrid's brakes feel pretty darn normal. I mean, the pedal's a little bit spongy, but it's nothing bad, and just maybe a hint of regen braking nonlinearity as you're coming to a stop. But we think a lot of people will get in this car and not even really be thinking about the fact that they're using a hybrid. So in terms of active safety systems, the Crosstrek Hybrid pretty much comes standard with everything that we really care about, including blind spot warning and rear cross traffic warning, which the regular Crosstrek does not come standard with. So there's no question that turning the Crosstrek into a hybrid has made it a better driving vehicle. The powertrain is just so much nicer, especially that low-speed drivability stuff with the electric assist. And if you're cross-shopping your Crosstreks, that might be enough to have that improved powertrain, but just keep in mind that the hybrid starts at a higher trim level than the regular Crosstrek, so you are going to be spending some extra money to get this hybrid. Now, things get a little fuzzier when you compare the Crosstrek hybrid to the Subaru's Forester hybrid, because that's only about $2,500 more than the Crosstrek, yet you're getting a larger, more comfortable vehicle with more passenger space, larger cargo area, and yet it's using the same hybrid powertrain. So it is something to think about, that if you're looking for a little bit more space, you might want to spend a little bit more money to get the Forester version of this hybrid. So that's our video review of the 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid. To see all of its test results and for more information on other small SUVs, check out consumerreports.org.